Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to the show today. My name is Spencer Walsh. On the show, Paul Manafort getting off easy, 47 months behind bars after a possibility of life for at least him. So probably 10, 15, 20 years. Trump Labor Department has weakened the 2016 overtime pay law screwing workers. Joe Biden is bad. We'll tell you why. And finally, we'll talk about the House, and we'll talk about Meghan McCain. So, yeah, but first we start with Paul Manafort. Nearly 7 months after he was found guilty of a host of financial crimes, President Donald Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, sentenced to 47 months in prison. Manafort's fate marks the longest prison sentence to date secured by Mueller and his team. Prosecutors who are empowered to pursue any crimes they uncover over the course of their Russia investigation. That's the thing. They don't have to stick to collusion. If they see obvious blatant evidence of a crime down some path that's kind of calling them, they have every right to go down and pursue that path, which is what they did here. Manafort will face a separate hearing next week before U.S. District Judge Amy Berman, stemming from related charges. So he's really not kind of done yet. So he's going to get 47 months in prison for that. So, wearing a green jumpsuit and confined to a wheelchair, Manafort listened as U.S. District Judge T.S. Ellis explained that his sentence was unrelated to the core of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's ongoing investigation into interference in the 2016 election. He's not before the court for having anything to do with colluding before Russian government, Ellis said at one point, which probably is going to make all the Trump heads go, whoa. Yeah, Trump, meanwhile, dangled the possibility of a Manafort pardon, saying as recently as last November, I wouldn't take it off the table. Why would I take it off the table? As a result, though, prosecutors in Manhattan have been reportedly preparing a series of non-federal indictments for Manafort because that would make them untouchable by a presidential pardon. So Trump's long fingers will not reach us. Yeah, that's what they say. If they do a non-federal pardon, if they do a state pardon, if they do a district or a local pardon, Manafort's legal team spent weeks leading up to his standings by essentially pleading for mercy from the court, arguing the client had been victimized by a special prosecutor run amok. So the special counsel's attempt to vilify Manafort as a lifelong and irredeemable felon is beyond the pale and grossly overstates the facts before this court. His attorney wrote in a memo filed over this month, so he's pretty much been like, we're the victims, please. Even though Mueller said, oh yeah, you guys did shockingly bad financial crime. This is unlike anything at the level I've ever seen before. And what does the judge do? Be like, okay, I believe you, Manafort. It's okay. Yeah. Manafort's prosecutors immediately pushed back on Manafort's woes in the argument, writing in a memo of their own that Manafort blames everyone from the special counsel's office to his Ukrainian clients for his own criminal choices. Yeah, so he's going to have plenty of time to think about those choices over the next 47 months. Yeah, so here's the thing, though. Manafort's sentence is much later than anticipated. His recommended sentence was 15 years longer. Lawyers on Twitter compared the light sentence to harsh punishments regular people receive. For example, Scott Hetchinger said, for context, he said this on Twitter, at Scott Hetch, for context, Manafort's 47 months in prison. My client yesterday was offered 36 to 72 months in prison for stealing $100 worth of quarters from a residential laundry room. Yeah, as opposed to shocking financial crimes put forth by Robert Mueller. Jesus. That is a great example of the phenomenon that's explored in the book, excellent book by Matt Taibbi, The Divide, about how the rich get off on the justice system. They get rarely punished, and if they do get punished, it's not nearly as much as a normal person would get punished for a much lighter crime. So that's the thing. So former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner reacts to the Manafort sentencing. As a former prosecutor, I'm embarrassed. As an American, I'm upset. I'm just disappointed with Judge Ellis. It's an outrage and it's disrespectful, he says, of the American people. So why did the judge cut him so much slack? It's hard to know, but the judge seemed to have some sympathy for Manafort, saying he otherwise lived a blameless life. Oh God! So, yeah, I mean, I really don't know how to put any other words on it. It's another case of getting good lawyers, getting off on a crime that is. I mean, just rich people have it easier in our justice system. It's proven time and time again. This is another great example of it. All right, so yeah, that's what you need to know about the Manafort hearing. We're going to turn now our attention to Donald Trump's Labor Department, where he has been weakening recently the 2016 overtime pay law. His Labor Department announced a new proposal that would extend overtime pay to millions of Americans, according to the Economic Policy Institute. So, the proposal would set the income threshold under which workers get overtime to $35,308 a year. This sounds good, sounds like lowering it, but significantly worse than the proposal that suggested in 2016 under Obama that would set the threshold at $47,476. At the end of the year, the rule extending overtime pay to workers who make $47,476 a year or less went into effect, but it was quickly undermined by a court challenge from business associations. That rule was a result of 2 years of work from the Labor Department, including meetings with 200 organizations, input from every other 250 input, and over 250,000 public comments. The threshold was intended to be raised every 3 years from its time of implementation, so the threshold will go up. So that's the overtime pay threshold there. So sadly, the 2016 law that was never enforced because from the time it was announced, the Trump administration made clear that they intended to weaken it. So they're like, yeah, whatever. It's not a big deal. Now they finally, 3 years later, have gone around to doing it. But even this Obama rule was weak in comparison to the overtime protections, according to the EPI in 1975. So yeah, it may sound like lower is better, but in this case, higher is better. This is the threshold you have to pass here. So higher is better for workers. According to the EPI in 1975, over 60% of all salaried workers qualified for mandatory overtime pay at the threshold at the time, adjusted for inflation, which would be $55,000 today. In 2016, the percentage of Americans salary qualified for overtime plummeted to 77%. The new rules created by the Obama administration would have upped theirs to 33%. So now we don't really know how much it's going to be. This represents, though, a huge blow to American workers. Many of them voted for Trump now that they're getting this overtime here taken away from them. I wonder how many it's going to be now, and you can bet they're going to find every way to weasel out of providing their workers overtime if it works for them. So, yeah. So, of course, most employees who work hourly are entitled to overtime, but 2016 laws were a big deal for middle-class salaried workers, actually, who are paid by year, not by hour. So the rules would have protected them from greedy bosses who don't want to follow industry norms for overtime. And while Trump is likely to spin this as a win for workers, it's a loss compared to the deal they would have received if they elected. If Barack Obama had continued. So, yeah, if they hadn't elected Trump, so that's the problem. So, yeah, definitely Trump. This is again another way to file that under the long pile of things that Trump has done to hurt workers in his presidency. All right, I think we all a good portion of us know that Joe Biden is not good. This, I mean, may not be new to some people, but it may be new. I mean, the list of reasons why the former Vice President and Senate pal, the racist good old boy Strom Thurmond and Jesse Helms is one of the worst potential field of Democratic candidates. It's extremely long and well founded. There's been some new entries to that list, though. There is a big list of those people. So yeah, he was friends with segregationists Jesse Helms and Strom Thurmond as one of the worst options from this long list of why he is not good. On CNN, Andrew Kaczynski resurfaced a pair of C-SPAN clips in which Biden bemoaned the hopelessness of rehabilitating Americans convicted of crimes. He warned Senate colleagues and public about the predators on our streets, and we have an obligation to cordon them off from society. So, again, ridiculously tough anti-crime rhetoric, or tough on crime rhetoric. That is not where we need to go today. So this is 1993 in November. Let's take a look.
It's the second thing that we all have agreed upon, and that is, unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now, not out of a liberal instinct for love, brother, and humanity, although I think that's a good instinct, but for simple, pragmatic reasons. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And, Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people.
Yeah, so pretty much just making up a bunch of accusations about a whole group of people. He has probably never met anyone from that group of people in his life, or at least in the past, 30 years. Biden says later, the U.S. justice system doesn't know how to rehabilitate and could not be a condition, and it could not be, a condition for release, taking credit for prison sentences not tied to rehabilitation. I think he said something like, "I'm proud that we put people in jail and everything except for jaywalking has the death penalty these days." And he said that like it's a good thing. Like, come on. It's pretty crazy. So, yeah, that shows you where Joe Biden's head is at, and it's not a pretty sight. Not a pretty sight. All right. After some will they won't they flip-flopping on the Democratic leadership this week, House passed a pretty vague resolution broadly condemning hate Thursday afternoon. A lot of people said it was good, I guess, and I mean we don't really know too much about what was in the resolution was released, but I think it was, some people said it was good, some people said it was vague, but I think it pretty much got the point across that, guys, hate isn't cool. I mean, a lot of people did kind of make fun of it for its kind of negative, it's kind of like negative, like it's obviously like we are obviously we want to not condemn hate, right, guys? We like hate, actually. Like, it's like kind of saying the sky is blue, clouds are white, except for example. Like, that is like who shouldn't condemn hate? Wait for it. Oh, checking the roll call here. 23 Republicans voted against it. Omar, though, voted yes. The resolution originated as a rebuke of Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar for her remarks criticizing Israel's lobby influence on American politics, the Israel lobby's influence on American politics. So the initial draft was criticized for its focus on only condemning anti-Semitism. The final 7-page text of the resolution allowed for members to signally also stand against Islamophobia and other forms of discrimination. It was reportedly postponed further on Thursday so that members of some groups, such as the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, could be represented as well. Omar's remarks, though, were weaponized as anti-Semitic not only by some Democrats, but also by conservatives and elected Republicans, without so much as a leg to stand on when it comes as criticizing bigotry. For example, Donald Trump, Kevin McCarthy, all those people. Those who are the same type of guys who are like George Soros buys elections with his big Jewish money. Like, yeah. So the text of the resolution makes clear what this was. It was a defensive maneuver by Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, most concerned with scolding a freshman congresswoman back in line in a desperate attempt to avoid being called racist by the party that's racist. So yeah, people, after a weekend of getting absolutely scalded by Republicans, assassination threats, and crazy 9/11 posters, like, that's the Democratic Party's reaction. Not to comfort them, show that Ilhan Omar